Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be giving my reasons why I think Arsenal FC will be winning the Premier League this season. We are at the midway mark, 19 to 20 games of the Premier League season has already been done, so I feel like it's the perfect time to give my reasons of why they will win the Premier League against Manchester City, their rivals, and it's undeniable, it's undoubtable. Mikel Arteta has done a marvellous job at the club, turning it around. Who would have thought they would be competing for the Premier League as we speak when we know last year they finished 5th? He has literally turned the club around. He's got rid of the bad eggs like players like Guendouzi and Aubameyang who lack professionalism. He brought in his own players, stamped his own authority on the side with his attractive brand of football. He has improved the young guns to such an astronomical level. So let's see if Mikel Arteta can get the job done, finish this storyline and actually win the Premier League. However, before I give my reasons why I think Arsenal win Premier League, you know I'm going to say make sure you guys like, comment and hit that big subscribe button right there, because only 10% of you guys are actually subscribed to my channel. And make sure you give me your own predictions. Do you think Manchester City will hunt down the Gunners and win their 5th Premier League in 6 years? Or do you think Mikel Arteta can get the job done? So the first factor I'm going to be talking about is experience, and it's undeniable that Pep Guardiola obviously has the advantage in this aspect. We know Pep Guardiola is a serial winner wherever he goes, and even within the Premier League, winning 4 out of the last 5 Premier Leagues, we know that he never really feels the pressure. Manchester City never really feel the pressure because they are known for being comeback kings, coming back in Premier League title races and actually winning the trophy at the end of the season. We have seen this happen against great dominant Liverpool sides in the past, in the 2018-19 season when they came back to literally lift the trophy. We saw it last year, them obviously keep Liverpool at arm's reach length, winning the Premier League as well. So it doesn't really faze them. The moment, the pressure, the anxiety throughout the season, it seems like they're able to cope with this fairly well. And this is going to be another day at the office for them, competing against Arsenal when it comes to this Premier League title race. And maybe Manchester City can hang their hat to the fact that Arsenal may be known as choke artists. We saw it last season when they were in prime position to finish in the top 4 race against Tottenham Hotspur. They went into some abysmal form in the latter half of the Premier League season, losing to teams like Brighton, Crystal Palace, even Tottenham Hotspur themselves, which allowed the experienced Tottenham side to obviously leapfrog them to finish 4th in the Premier League race. So potentially this could happen again because the palms are going to be sweatier, the expectations are going to be higher, and it's going to be much more pressure than last season, and maybe Arsenal will crumble again. But this season just feels different, doesn't it? Arsenal are getting results this season which you have not seen in previous years. They have gone to stadiums, teams which are usually known as their bogey teams. We have seen it at times already this season, beating Tottenham Hotspur away, their first time since 2014. Them beating Brighton as well when we know they have had a troubled past against that side. Even beating Liverpool at the Emirates, that doesn't really happen often. So this Arsenal side feels rejuvenated, it feels fresh, it feels new, it feels like they're motivated, they're focused, especially since they brought in the Premier League title experience winners like Zinchenko and Jesus. They have changed the culture and the fabric at the club. We have seen players talk highly of the 2 signings, even Jesus being injured, him still motivating, rallying the players, saying that we can win every game. Look, we're in this title race, it's not a joke. Even Zinchenko, his presence on the field, his calmness, his ability to step in the midfield when they're under pressure, when they get not dominated by the opposition, all these little things add up for Arsenal if they're actually going to win the Premier League this season, and it can't go underneath the rug as if it doesn't matter. These sort of personalities within the dressing room will help navigate Arsenal through tough times, tough periods, tough spells within the Premier League season if they go on a 2-game losing streak or if they have failed to win in their last 2 or 3 games. These type of players have been there, they know what it feels like, and they will make sure the locker room stays at ease, there's calmness. And even players like Jorginho getting added into the squad, a guy who's won the Champions League, a guy who's won the Euros, that sort of experience is going to be pivotal to challenge Manchester City, who we know are made for this sort of stuff when it comes to Premier League title races. So the next factor I'm going to be talking about is squad depth. And once upon a time, it only felt like Manchester City were the only side within the Premier League who had this in abundance. Talent in every single position. And I'm not saying Arsenal have this at their disposal, but if we actually have an in-depth look into Arsenal's squad, it's actually a lot better than it seems. We look at the striker position already. We know Jesus changed the culture, the fabric of the club, his pressing, his dribbling skills, a much better all-round footballer, which fans didn't really notice. And people say Nketiah should have got sold to Crystal Palace. People say Nketiah is not good enough hold-up play, his ability on the ball, only thing he has in him is to score tap-ins, but his all-round play isn't that much impactful when it comes to results. But Nketiah has been on fire this season. Jesus get injured, Nketiah injected into the starting lineup, and we have seen his impact, scoring 2 against Manchester United, obviously scoring against Brighton, scoring against Oxford. He has shown that he is levels and he's up for the task when it comes to starting for Arsenal Football Club, which actually has a little bit of whispers that is Nketiah actually better than Jesus? Should he be starting even if Jesus is fully fit? And this is a nice problem to have, a nice dilemma, because this just increases the intensity, the work rate in training, because obviously each player is going to be fighting for their spot, especially in the forward line. We can even look at other positions like Trossard. He has been unbelievable for Brighton this season. Here's a backup, a study to Martinelli. We saw Trossard score a hat-trick against Liverpool, who has been pivotal for Potter and De Zerbi when it comes to Brighton's success. Jorginho backing up Partey. Obviously, he doesn't have the defensive skill and quality like Thomas Partey, but at the end of the day, his calmness, his ability to dictate play, calm it down, slow things down, is going to be pivotal when it comes to frantic games against teams that play with a lot of emotion and passion. We can even look at Tomiyasu at the right back position, where it feels like he was one of the most underrated right backs within the league, backing up Ben White. The left back position, I feel like Kieran Tierney is extremely underrated, and if he wasn't at Arsenal, I feel like he would be playing for 15 other Premier League sides as we speak. Obviously, there's a few irreplaceables, players which do get injured where you're thinking, oh, Arsenal's title hopes are at jeopardy, players like Odegaard, Saliba. But at the end of the day, I feel like Manchester City do have this as well, this problem, especially since the Manchester City side feels like it's evolved and it's built around that striker. So if he goes down, what position will Manchester City be left with, especially since they don't have that many goal scorers after him, especially since Haaland is responsible for 50% of Man City's goals this Premier League season. And with the Europa League fast approaching for Arsenal, it feels like they have the squad depth to rotate so players aren't jaded, they aren't tired when it comes to the latter half of the Premier League title push. So I feel like Arsenal are in pole position, on an actual great position when it comes to this Premier League title race. So the next aspect I'm going to be talking about is the fixtures. And I'm just going to say this now, it's undeniable. I feel like Arsenal do have the harder run. They still have to visit teams like Liverpool at Anfield, Newcastle at St James's Park, even going to the Etihad against the Premier League champions Manchester City, and we know they don't have good records at all there. We know we saw last season against Newcastle, they literally lost when it came to the top 4 race. So will this play a factor? Will this give them motivation, or will this psychologically dampen their hopes? We know at Anfield they usually get battered by 3 to 4 goals, but Liverpool haven't been in tremendous form this season. They don't look like the same side as we have known in the past, and we know against Manchester City they don't usually win there. I feel like the last game they won at the Etihad was in 2016. So that just tells you a lot how tough of a task it's going to be for Arsenal FC. Even in the latter half, the last 2 games of the Premier League season, they're facing teams like Wolves and Nottingham Forest. And usually you're going to be saying, yes, you love those sort of games against the mid-table, poor sides who just sit back. But think about it, these teams might be fighting for their Premier League lives. And the last opposition you would want to face is a team which are fighting for their lives with the passion, the fans, the franticness of the game, the crowd injecting the energy into the players. That sort of atmosphere you don't want to be against. You want to be facing the middle of the pack teams which are pretty much booking their holidays, and Arsenal don't have this luxury. But in the next 12 games, it's going to be significant, and I feel like this will genuinely decide Arsenal's title hopes. We see out of the next 12 teams, 8 of them are in the bottom half. And even in the teams which are in the top half, they're going to be facing teams like Brentford, who we know they actually have a decent record against, beating them this season already. And even Fulham, which we know have an extremely poor record when it comes to London derbies. Manchester City, like I said, have the upper hand in this aspect. They are facing teams like Liverpool, facing teams like Newcastle, even Arsenal twice. But we know these games are going to be at home, and that's a massive advantage for the side. However, Arsenal do have a 5 to 8 point advantage over Manchester City. So even if they lose 1 or maybe 2 games, it's not going to be the end of the world since they still will be in front of Manchester City. And it's not like Manchester City have been absolutely magnificent this season, even at home. There's no guarantee that they'll win all these games because we have seen them slip up against the lower average sides within the Premier League, teams against Brentford at home, even against Everton, who we know are fighting relegation under Frank Lampard, drawing 1-1. So it's not like the Etihad is this daunting atmosphere like Old Trafford, Anfield, even the Emirates. It's not like that. Teams can come there and pick up points. We know Crystal Palace in the past have done that. So honestly, I still feel like it's advantage Arsenal, even if their fixtures are a little bit tougher. So next factor I'm going to be talking about is the head-to-head Arsenal versus Manchester City. And this couldn't have been written any better. It's as if the Premier League gods knew this was going to happen, that these two sides will still have to face off against each other within the Premier League title race twice. So it's going to be a magnificent game between the two sides. And going into these two games in the next month or so, I feel like Arsenal obviously have the advantage because A, they're facing Manchester City at home at the Emirates, and we know this season they haven't lost there yet. And B, it's not as if they have to win both games. They can win one, draw one. They can win one, lose one. It doesn't matter. As long as they don't make this game a decisive factor for why Manchester City wins the Premier League title race. As long as they keep them at arm's length, Manchester City do not gain an advantage in the two games. Arsenal are still in the driver's seat. Their destiny lays within their hands, and that's all they can ask for. Even if they do lose the two games, don't get it wrong, Arsenal will still be in the driver's seat because most likely they still will be top of the Premier League, but they will be psychologically shot. Their mentally, Manchester City will have the upper hand, and knowing this, they will have the momentum to win 5 or 6 or 8 games in a row to keep that sort of rhythm going. Whereas we know Arsenal in the past, maybe they'll be having flashbacks of last season of when they've lost 1 or 2 games in a row. So the pressure will be higher since it is a Premier League title race, and maybe Arsenal will never recover from this because those 2 games are massive, and it will just turn the tide and give Manchester City the advantage going on in the latter half of the season. So yeah, overall, I believe Arsenal will win the Premier League title. I feel like the gap is too big at the moment. Even if they lose a few games, it won't be a massive factor. And as long as they don't let Manchester City get the mental edge, beating them in both games, both Premier League games, when they face off each other, Arsenal should cruise to this Premier League victory. Obviously, Manchester City have the upper hand in terms of experience, but I feel like the experience injected within the Arsenal side with the new signings this season will play a massive factor, not only on the pitch, but outside the pitch. So the younger players do not let the nerves overwhelm them. Pep Guardiola, we know he's a historic manager, but we have seen already at times this season him talk down on his side, saying that it's time for a new club to win the Premier League since they have won it so much. So mentally, will this lack of belief creep into the player's psyche for Manchester City when it comes to this Premier League title race? Especially since Pep Guardiola loves rotating, it feels like he's getting bored of his own wizardry, trying formations, trying new tactics. We know he's adjusted from a 4-3-3 to a 3-4-2-1 and hasn't worked wonders. If he keeps doing this, we know he loves his own genius and wants to create new innovative ways when it comes to winning games. If he keeps doing this, we know it will lead to more inconsistent performances for Manchester City and will give Arsenal the upper hand when it comes to this Premier League title race. I think it will be close, but I feel like since Manchester City may be focusing on the Champions League since they have never won it, and it feels like tailor-made this season, they're geared up to do so since they have Erling Haaland, the striker who can bury chances that they missed last season against Real Madrid. Arsenal will have the sole focus and motivation to make history, winning the Premier League for the first time in 19 years. However, I'm more interested in your opinions. Let me know in the comment section, who do you think is going to win the Premier League this season? Will Arsenal or Manchester City be lifting that trophy at the end of the season?